From the 26th through the 28th of September 2002, the largest organization fighting to end the drug war in the United States, Drug Policy Alliance, brought together over 600 people from around the country and across the globe for an unprecedented conference, Breaking the Chains, People of Color, and the War on Drugs.
The reason that we chose the title Breaking the Chains is because the basic purpose of this conference is to begin to look at the ways in which we have been chained to negative ways of thinking, negative approaches to dealing with problems of substance abuse and crime that have kept us locked down.
I'm at this conference because it's about time, finally, and at long last, that we have a conference that's specifically for people of color to deal with the drug issue.
My interest here is that I served 10.5 years in prison, so I know firsthand about this war on drugs. I was convicted for possession of drugs with intent to distribute.
I'm a former pardoned prisoner under the Rockefeller drug law. I received 15 years to life as a first-time offender. I was virtually paralyzed from the neck down and a total care patient while in prison.
I did 15 years on domestic violence, but drugs played a major part in that as well.
I've lived a double prosecution, you know. The first one is because of my color, and the second one, very years later, it was to defend myself from the prosecution as a drug user.
We fish for drug offenders, but we only fish in certain waters. We fish in dark waters, and because we keep bringing up dark fish, we think that these are the only fish out there.
There are more white people who use drugs than people of color. Yet there are more people of color who are arrested for drugs than there are white people. There's a problem with that.
There's no way to be a Puerto Rican and not know prison, and not know juvie, and not know parole and probation, and not know thousands and thousands of people in your own little set that are constantly dealing with this garbage.
It's in the name of the war on drugs that Amadou Diallo was shot down as he stood in the vestibule of his own residence. And it's in the name of the so-called war on drugs that we see beatings, arrests, shootings, killings, and it's being visited primarily on black and brown people.
Why is it that so many people of color believe that drug problems exist primarily in our communities? And that's just not true. So we want to start looking at ways to look at how we're thinking and see how much of it is based on fact and how much of it is based on myth.
Important for people who are concerned about this war on drugs to come together. That means victims, it means people in the criminal justice system, it means social workers, families, ministers, everybody must come together and define what has happened in this so-called war on drugs. Who has been the beneficiary? Who is the victims? What has happened to the families all across America?
I spent 6.5 years in prison, first time nonviolent drug offense, but I was originally sentenced to 24.5 years in federal prison and fortunately was given executive clemency by President Clinton. I have a 7-year-old son that I had while I was incarcerated, and 5 minutes after I gave birth to him, they shackled me to the bed. And so I'm grateful that I was given the opportunity to finally raise him, and one of the issues for me has been, the number one was adjusting to motherhood.
Pictures frame a portrait of family unity, though we be disjointed because wifey was not you, not for many years. Later I'd walk down the aisle as your bridesmaid. But it was sorrowful time because Bush was still president, or maybe Reagan. Either year, crack was still setting precedents in our home. And no matter how many nights I pulled you from paranoia's grasp, we still ended up back on the street, still ended up pacing fear, peddling untruths in the name of love. Be me and you was road dogs. I had your back, you had mine, right? Whether it was the women's shelter, the holding cell, or the roach-littered floor, we were traveling through your hell together.
It's not really the war on drugs. I really think it is the war on youth, because the people that's affected by, most color people that's affected by this is youth of color. These people are being locked up from age 16 and they don't have they don't have no education of even knowing what's going on. They missed out their whole childhood, and they're not even being accepted back into society again when they come out. I mean, no open arms, no skills, no nothing.
We're here to basically give a performance. You know, we got a compilation coming out called Fresh Out of Juvie Hall that deal with youngsters who've been recently released out of Juvie Hall, and they come from that drug culture.
I got out of jail. When I turned 18, I was in jail for a long time. It really shouldn't just be a war on drugs. It needs to be a war on people dying. It needs to be a war on people being homeless, people with no jobs and low income, people on Section 8. It needs to be a war on all that stuff in order to make America happen.
Think back to the kind of precursor, the 15 or 20 years that preceded the contemporary war on drugs. We have people coming together across racial lines, ethnic lines, anti-sexist movement as well, right? And in the face of that anti-apartheid activity, boom, what comes up and breaks it apart? Richard Nixon's war on crime.
Dear President Clinton, I am returning the enclosed Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal to you in protest of your administration's current national drug policy. Specifically, I would urge you to cancel your emergency spending proposal of $1.3 billion over the next 2 years to expand the American military involvement in Colombia.
What is striking about the drug war in its international component is how the things that American policy does abroad are so linked to our own communities here in the United States.
The State Department has an enormous fumigation program, and we're trying to defoliate our way out of this problem. Not unlike Agent Orange in Vietnam, we're trying to spray our way out of this problem. And that's having the most impact on Colombia.
I, who speak to you, have been a person who has dedicated himself to the fight for my population, for the defense of their rights, and that is why I have been persecuted also. I have had 5 attempts against my life. I have within my body the impacts of the bullets, and that forced me lately to leave the country.
The coca leaves picked by the peasants, the paramilitary gon' swoop down soon. Rocks get slung across the streets and the police beast is on the hunt for you. The banks clean the big dirty money, the borders let the coke and heroin come through. The politicians start a drug war to lock up the last in the chain of fools.
It is the war against drugs in our country focused on the peasants who, for economic need, have had to take on planting coca and use the chemicals necessary for the processing of cocaine. In that process, Colombia receives help from the United States for many, many years.
Isn't it time to ask ourselves, where did all the influx of the drugs and the health crisis all across the world come about? And where is the capital going?
A lot of the money does not go directly to things like treatment, but simply go to furthering investigations, buying cars, buy money, and it's a self-perpetuating cycle.
I'm here primarily because I strongly believe that the war on drugs, if there's going to be one, should be primarily a public health war, not a criminal justice war.
Having gotten clean in 1975, alcohol and drug treatment has been
has been a passion. I care more about the addict than perhaps any other segment of the population.
Irregardless of what the person's drug of choice is, it's not about their drug of choice, it's about your ability to embrace that individual and accept them as a human being and meet them where they are. Do you know what it takes for a person to be able to ask for help? We know about pride, we know about dignity, and we know how difficult it is for you to come to a person broken and downtrodden and helpless and hopeless and to ask for help.
What are you going to do? If you come close to your face, are you going to move your face? Or either are you going to pull that chair closer to you and look in his face and help this person?
When I go back to East Baltimore, I can't find nobody I grew up with, that I hung with, that I ran the streets with. They either in jail, dead, or like myself, living with AIDS and hepatitis C. So this system is designed to kill us. 3 years it took to get people to give us the opportunity to run a needle exchange program to reduce the spread of AIDS. What does that mean? You know what it means. It means you have to decriminalize the possession and distribution of a needle.
We've helped people understand that it's not true that all drug use ends up in being problematic drug use. We've helped people understand that clean needles does not stimulate increased drug use. We've helped people understand that marijuana is not a gateway drug.
If you look at Switzerland, where they've started the medically supervised heroin program, if you look at any community where programs are enforced, it's because you have an agreement that cuts across political lines and special interests that support whatever the particular initiative is going to be.
Part of the responsibility of these support networks is to help people to decolonize the mind. That we don't have to think like white people in order to survive. As a matter of fact, white folks on this planet make up less than 10% of the planet. And it's not for them to dictate who we are.
These laws, this constitution, all this crap was made up for white folks, kid. And we can't live by it. We need our communities to really raise up and get together and start supporting each other, man. We can't wait for no White House and no government to come in here and say, hey, here's a program. You understand? We got to get it together, yo.
I think that we need to get more people involved in the communities of color. I think that more families and stuff have to become actively engaged with respect to the movement and also speaking out to the legislators.
I didn't think I had anyone. At the time I was arrested and convicted for selling drugs, I thought I was alone and nobody understood that I was just doing this to survive. And now this just confirms that there are people who care and there are people like me who understand. Gathering in one place to strengthen the fight.
My call to action for everyone in here is everybody has a community. We all want our community, which is our home, to be a safe environment for our kids. That's where we start from.
Each and every one of us must be an advocate of our loved ones and the people in prison. And if we each reach someone and blow that trumpet and sound an alarm, there will be a change.
The words breaking the chain, that's what I learned to do. Even though I wasn't in prison, I was in prison. And then you have to learn to believe. And that's what I do. I believe now that things can change. And I believe that this whole room of people, I believe that I'm going to hold on to it. That when I leave from here, everything that I've got here, I believe that I can take it with me and make some changes.
I grew up as a gang member, spent most of my life in prison, and I see a lot of people with my background here, and I see that they're making a big difference in their communities, which that's what I want to do. I want to make a difference in my community.